What's going on, world of YouTube? This A New Breed coming back at you again. Now, for this video, this one's a little different because this is a subject I've never had to think about, but it's something I wanted to go ahead and throw some advice on. So I did a little studying about it, and it was an unusual question. The individual actually asked me and said, I'm a vegan. What chances do you think I have, or do you have any tips for vegans? Well, yes, I actually do. Now, these tips, again, are kind of all around tips for preppers, and, just I try to come from that angle generally. So, I had to do some studying and figure out caloric intake, how many calories the average individual intakes, where the calories can be found, protein sources, different things like that. So, this was something that was actually pretty interesting. So, I do want to thank the person who sent this question in. Now, to get it started, the first thing I would say for a vegan prepper, actually any prepper, but preferably a vegan prepper, find out the sources of proteins, fats, how you're going to be acquiring these things. And basically, I believe that the chances of survival are based on geographic location rather than just, anywhere. So, for instance, if you go to a climate that doesn't have very much vegetation, or you deal with a climate like I'm up in the north. So our growing seasons tend to span from, point A to point B. And then if you go further north into Canada, I know there are certain microclimates, but this is one of the things where you'd have to be in a climate where you could possibly produce vegetation for the majority of the year. So just think about that one. Now, running that in further would be looking at your food sources. Now, my preference is get a book that'll tell you about your food sources, where they grow, how they grow, different things. Stocking up on things like beans, rice, different things that you prefer on your diet. Because in this world, it doesn't matter if you're vegan or non-vegan, we've come to a point where the majority of our foods are completely and utterly over-processed. So that kind of changes the game, especially when it comes to people who are used to having their food on a shelf. The reason why I say this is due to the fact that grocery stores give us the availability to walk in and grab the things that we want, not necessarily thinking about the beginning, the middle, and the end step. So believing that as a vegan or non-vegan or vegetarian, you are going to have access to the same plants or meat sources, meat for the non-vegans, that you generally have would actually be foolish. So the best geographic location that I believe would possibly be in the south. Not up here in the north, due to the fact we do have winters and our growing season generally lasts about 6 months, depending on how long the cold lasts. Canadian, I cannot speak for, I don't know, but I know they do have a longer cold season depending on what parts you're in. So generally my belief is, and keyword my belief, is that if you're going to be a vegan prepper, you can stock up on a lot of different things. Like I said, get your calories up, stock up on non-perishable items, stock up on canned goods, different things that'll actually help with your diet. Now, looking at the caloric deficit so you don't lose too much weight, and it said on average, this is on average, this isn't across the board, on average, the average vegan takes in 600 calories per day less than the average person, while vegetarians take in an average of 260 calories less than what would be considered a meat eater. So stepping into that realm, just keep up your calories so you can keep up your energy, and also understanding where your food sources come from and how many times a day you're going to have to eat. Now, if you are in a situation where you are going to have to get firewood, do things like that, of course that's going to burn calories. So you're going to want to put yourself in a caloric surplus and compared to what you're currently, what current state you're in during the summer or spring. Now, how the body produces energy, getting certain things, of course, being able to knit, things like that will help. But if you, generally up in the north, if you run out of clothes, you're going to have to go for furs. So I don't know each individual's belief on that, and I'm not trying to, say anything towards anyone or however else. You get what I'm saying? Not trying to be completely politically correct, but at the same time, not trying to offend anybody on this specific manner, because I know some people are, That's just something it won't do. So looking for a reference point, I'm believing that warmer climates, places down in the south, would probably do best, somewhere you could plant, 6 to 9 months out of the year. Now, yes, there is preserving, there is canning, there's many different things you could do. You could even dry your foods out. But once you have started to dehydrate your foods, you're going to have to add more water to your foods or boil your foods in order to put the water back in. And then you are getting into your water rations. So if you're going to do that, please prepare to have extra water on hand. Okay, now we've already covered the book, we've covered the caloric deficit. Now we're going to cover availability. We spoke a little bit on that, talking about stores. Now, when you get into the general availability of vegan food, people will say it's everywhere. The problem is yes, it's everywhere, but you have to understand that if you pick up or consume the wrong food and you don't have knowledge of it, you do not know what plants are toxic or not. And this was part of the conversation that I mentioned to the individual that, we were going back and forth and we were having dialogue. And I asked them, do they have an extensive knowledge of what plants they can eat? And they actually said no, due to the fact that being able to go into the grocery store, you already have basically everything's already set up for you. So when you walk in, you go into the section that you're going to, just like that of vegetarians and meat eaters, and everything's already preset for you. So the vast majority of people don't actually know what they can and can't eat, what's good and bad for them, especially when you're out in nature, because there are plants that look alike, that one could be very good for you and the other could be highly toxic. So this isn't just for vegans, vegetarians, or anyone else. This is just for people in general. And I'm not saying that people who are from the north need to go down south, people from the south need to come up north. It's just going to be one of those things where it's all about your preference and where your food source grows more plentiful. So take that in stride. Now, again, for the individual who is a vegan prepper, like I said, congratulations, doing a wonderful job. Just be sure to stock up on things that will sustain you, and even the vegetarian preppers, everyone else, congrats on prepping, period. But I want people to understand that regardless of how it goes on, if it's a complete shit hit the fan situation, I've heard people say that they're going to grow their vegetables in their basement. Bullshit, you're not. If you don't have any form of power or grow lights, you're not growing anything in the basement, due to the fact it's an extremely dark climate and it's not necessarily the best place. Now, having certain ways to heat, I don't know what people are capable of. Running a generator, go ahead. You're going to make a lot of noise. You're going to draw attention. Whole nother video. We'll get into that later. So you have to think realistically what you can do with the bare minimum, not with the things that we have today, because speaking to preppers in this unrealistic vision of what the apocalypse is going to be like, whether it's for the worse or for the better, I've spoken to people who still believe they're going to have lights and running water. Now, if that isn't completely foolish, then I don't know what is, due to the fact that the initial start of something like that, you may have lights and running water. It depends on what the government decides to do. They could flip a switch and shut all that shit off. So the best way to control the people is to control their food and their water sources. And now that we have become completely dependent on stores and different places like that, and of course there are many people who grow small gardens, grow small orchards, etc., etc. But once the food is controlled and people no longer have a dependency on themselves and they have a dependency on the stores that they go to, basically everything is provided for you. So now if you ask the average person how to slaughter an animal, how to do things from that standpoint, what plants they can eat, how to properly grow soy, how to properly grow different vegetables, I'm not saying the vast majority, but there is a large portion of people who have no fucking idea how to do any of it. So if you are in a state where you are any of the above, regardless of what food you eat, and you have no idea what you're doing, get learned. Start to learn and educate yourself on your food sources, how to properly acquire the food. And I can't reiterate that enough, due to the fact that most people sit down and really ask yourself and educate yourself on your food source. If you like steak, if you like vegetables, I keep stumbling off the vegan thing, but whatever you like, look into how it's made. So if you think during the apocalypse you're just going to get up and get yourself a soy burger, good luck. You want the Impossible Burger? Well, at that point in time, it's probably impossible till you figure out how to make it yourself. So once again, learn your food sources, figure out where they come from, and just take it in stride. So I hope that helped. If it didn't, it is what it is. So, but that was basically for every prepper, but it was more, I hope I answered the question for the vegan individual who is asking, would they be able to survive in certain situations? Your survival is up to you, your education, your learning, and your preparation. It has nothing to do with what I say, because all this shit is just my opinion. I do state facts in this, but of course, once again, I don't personally know your survival or your will to survive, and that's what it boils down to. So, once again, learn, educate, and prepare. And remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Vegans of the apocalypse, man.